Patrick Leclerc from the Canadian Urban Transit Association. Mr. Leclerc.
Thanks. And Nick certainly set the tone, and I'll use your definition of 5 minutes. I like it much better than mine, so it's less stressful. So as you mentioned, I mean, you're all here because you have an interest in transportation, and so I assume as well you've all been following the election campaign with that in mind, looking for transportation. And one thing must have struck you really is that public transit really made its way into the campaign. But is it a natural fit to see public transit being so prominent in a national campaign? So let me tell you a bit of a history. At CUTA, about 15 years ago, we started to engage with federal decision makers on the urban transit issue. At the time, there was no investment from the feds in urban transit. So we came to Ottawa with our members and started meeting with decision makers and MPs, and they were really listening to us. But one thing they were telling us is, look, guys, and this is certainly an important issue, but you're just not talking to the right people. Go talk to your provincial governments. The federal government has no business in public transit. It's a provincial jurisdiction. So we heard that message for a few years, and we persisted. Now let's fast forward 15 years later. In the last leaders' debate on the economy, the words public transit were mentioned 12 times. In the span of only a few weeks in June and July of this summer, the federal government announced investment of over $5 billion in public transit projects in Calgary, Toronto, and Ottawa. Every year, the federal government is committing or investing about $1 billion in public transit. So what has changed? How come we went from zero 15 years ago to billions now in 2015? Well, what has changed is there's a clear realization now that public transit is not a local issue. It's more than that. Public transit projects are local and regional, sure, but the impact really is national. So when you invest in public transit, you invest in economic growth. You create a good quality job. You improve productivity. You improve the quality of life of people through the environment and social change as well. So that's what public transit does. Now we're in that I would say it's a nice challenge to have. We're seeing billions in public transit every year. All orders of government are investing together about $4.5 billion in transit infrastructure every year. But we don't have a clear direction when it comes to public transit. Nick alluded to that. It's more than funding. It's more than $1 billion here, $1 billion there. It's also to have a clear policy. We haven't defined the roles of each order of government when it comes to supporting public transit. So we invest $1 billion of federal money in transit, and we don't have a clear direction. So we need to get all orders of government to sit together to set the tone and establish kind of a national agenda when it comes to public transit, but it's really a nice challenge to have. There's another side of the public transit story that we need to tell, we need to share more, and it's the story of our manufacturers and suppliers. So when people think transit, they think of the bus operators, they think of OC Transpo, depending where you live, STO, TTC, or STM in Montreal. However, they don't think of the manufacturers and the suppliers. And Canadian companies are really North American and global leaders in public transit. In fact, about 70% of the North American bus market, urban bus market, is supplied by Canadian manufacturers. So this is very high quality jobs. And I'm not talking about the rail side. You all know about Bombardier and Thales as well, multinational being here in Canada. But what we need to look at is to look at what they create in terms of the high value jobs across the country. They really create clusters. We're seeing that in Manitoba and Ontario and in Quebec. However, we need to really pay attention to it because there are many jobs that are at risk. In July of this year, the U.S. Senate approved a transportation bill that, among other things, is proposing to increase Buy America requirements for transit rolling stock from 60% to 70%. And now we need to engage with our U.S. counterpart on that to find innovative and practical solution to that issue if we want to keep these high quality, high paying jobs here in Canada. We have practical solutions for that, and I'm happy to share it more. I just want to conclude maybe on the, I've been talking a lot about public transit, obviously, but it's more than that. It's not only public transit. As a matter of fact, it's not public transit against cars or against any other thing. It's about the transportation network. It's about integrated urban mobility, and that's what CUTA is about. We need to look at public transit as really a core pillar of our transportation network, and all other modes working in sync with public transit. It's about car sharing and ride sharing. It's about active transportation. When people move around in the city, they don't want to know if it's, well, do I have to take transit or my car? They want to have options, and options that better fit their lifestyle. And that's what transportation is all about. And moving forward, that's how we'll build sustainable and communities that are that really respond to the standards of living of Canadians and what they want.
All right, thank you, Mr. Leclerc.